Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about ways that police inflate how much the Polymer 80s are used in crimes. Okay, uh, I read one interesting statistic where they said 60% of the crimes are committed with these so-called ghost guns or Polymer 80s. Okay, now first thing that we need to kind of lay down is that it is legal for police to lie. Okay, the Supreme Court has protected their ability to lie, and that's the main reason why if you're ever being investigated or think you're being investigated, you always keep your mouth shut and you get a lawyer, because there's no way for you to know that any of the information that the police are giving you is true. I mean, they can tell you, hey, we've got 10 witnesses that say that they saw you commit a murder. They could be telling you that just to get a reaction out of you. So the point here is that police lie during the course of their normal work, especially when they're interacting with the public. Okay, so I think they just kind of used to lying in many cases, especially the police in cities, right? New York City, Los Angeles, places like Chicago. They're used to lying. It's part of the work that they do. So I think if your job is pretty much lying all the time, how do you turn off that switch? Okay. Second thing is that at the high levels, at the police chief level, okay, that's basically a political position, right? The police chiefs get appointed by mayors, and they're basically giving the mayor whatever political fuel the mayor needs. Okay, so that's the other thing that comes into play here. Okay, so with that all said, how are the number of Polymer 80s being used in crimes? How is that number being inflated? Okay, well, the first thing is to be aware of that. The term ghost gun traditionally referred to any gun where the serial number was scratched off. Okay, so anytime they recover a gun from a crime scene, numbers are scratched off. It's a ghost gun, and that's been a thing since before Polymer 80s ever became popular. Okay, so it's not like they said, okay, we've got these Polymer 80s, we need a new category to put these in when these are recovered from a crime. What they basically says, hey, we already got this pre-existing category of ghost guns, right? That include any factory gun where the serial numbers are scratched off, and we're gonna take these Polymer 80s which don't have serial numbers, and we're just gonna lump them all into that. Okay, so scratching off serial numbers on factory guns is nothing new. Especially if you're purchasing, if you're doing an illegal straw purchase, right, where you're purchasing the gun with the intention of selling it to somebody else, especially if you think that they might be committing a crime with it, it makes sense that you're gonna scratch off the serial number before you give it to that person, right? And you're probably going to do it within a short time before doing that transfer, so you don't get caught with it, since scratching the serial numbers off a gun is a crime in itself. But hey, I mean, if you're already committing crimes, what's one more crime? Especially if somebody's planning to commit, like an armed robbery or murder with that, scratching serial numbers off of a gun is pretty small in comparison to that. Okay, but the thing is that when they recover all these guns off the streets, from these drug dealers, and the serial numbers are scratched off, they're all called ghost guns. Okay, and when one of these Polymer 80s, I mean, a small percentage of them, a tiny percentage is also going to end up on the street. When one of these ends up in the street, this goes into that much bigger category of these ghost guns with the serial numbers scratched off. Okay, if you build the gun yourself, if it doesn't have a serial number, right, you're not required to put one on there. Now, if you do put one on there, you cannot remove it. The law says that you cannot remove it. It doesn't say that you have to add one. Okay, so that's the first way that these numbers are being inflated. Okay, the Polymer 80s are being added to all the other crime guns with the serial numbers scratched off. Now, why Why would they be buying factory guns and scratching off the serial numbers as opposed to building these Polymer 80s? Well, there is a lot of time and effort into building these guns. Okay, it's not just a matter of 30 minutes assembly. There's a debugging process, and after you get the gun working, there's at least a 200 round break-in period. Okay, that's on Polymer80's website. You have to shoot at least 200 rounds through the gun in order for it to be, in order for it to be considered reliable. Okay, that's pretty standard. So in order to be able to do that, first you need access to a range where you can shoot 200 rounds. Okay, so these are all reasons why it's easier, it's cheaper for criminals to or would-be criminals to get factory-made guns and then scratch the serial numbers off of them rather than fuss with trying to build these guns. And I'm not saying that it would never happen, it could never happen. I'm just saying that it's a tiny percentage because there's other easier ways to get their guns. They can steal them. Okay, so let's continue ways that the Polymer 80 numbers are being inflated. The other way is in places like California and New York, where these guns are illegal. When they're, when they do a confiscation, right? Simply for possession, they call it a crime. So now all of a sudden, these are crime guns. So if they if they do one of these stop and frisk things that they do in the liberal cities where they just randomly stop people and frisk them, if you're carrying one of these guns, it's going to be taken from you, and all of a sudden, they consider that a crime, right? So now it becomes a crime gun, okay? So that's another way where the Polymer 80 numbers are being inflated, okay? They're including basically non-violent, confiscations of these guns, and they're basically just throwing it all into the gun, into the ghost gun bin, okay? The other thing is, like, a lot of times people will accidentally, go into, let's say, a federal building or go to an airport, just because, let's say, they're used to carrying a gun all the time, and then, they accidentally go to one of these federal buildings where they're not supposed to have one. And then what normally happens is, if they enter one of these buildings, the gun's taken away from them. I mean, technically it's a crime, so now it's a crime gun. Even though it might be a low level thing, it's pretty hard to get your gun back after something like that. So now those guns end up in the ghost gun crime bin. Okay, so that's another way that they use to inflate the number. Now another way, a couple of months ago, in California, I think it was Los Angeles, they raided a warehouse over there. I believe the story is that one of the employees there had illegally sold a Polymer 80 that he had built himself prior to ever working for this company. Okay, so he's working for the company. It's not like he bought the gun from that company, all right, that was selling the Polymer 80 frames. He already owned it in advance because he sold it illegally. And he happened to be working for this company that sold these Polymer 80 frames. They then raided the company, right? They used that as an excuse to raid the company, and they confiscated all of these Polymer 80 frames. Okay, so I don't know if the guy had 1,000 in stock, 10,000, a million. I don't know how many he had, but all of those frames, right, even though they were uncompleted, it's not a gun at that point, right? It's just a piece of plastic. It's an uncompleted frame. You better believe that whatever that number was, they dumped it into the ghost gun bin. Okay, now all of a sudden these became crime guns. So that's how they inflate the numbers, and they come back to us, right, and they report numbers to the media, right, and the liberal media just eats it up. They're more than happy to hear these numbers. They're not going to question them on it, So they take these guns that aren't even completed, and now they add them to the ghost gun bin, and they come up with these large numbers where they say that 60% of the crime guns are all Polymer 80s. So a couple of things for you guys to think about. Oh, the other thing is the buybacks, right? Now, you might have a situation where, in these liberal cities, they do the buybacks, but you may also have a situation where, let's say, somebody in the household, finds one of these, that person, let's say the mother finds the son may be over 21 years old, and she may not even tell him that that she's taking his gun. She just might not feel comfortable with it being in the house, doesn't know anything about guns, brings it over to the police station and gives it to them. Okay, so all of a sudden, that increases the number of ghost guns that are recovered. Okay, so that's a non-violent situation. But regardless of that, they don't separate violent from non-violent. They just throw everything into this ghost gun bin because it helps the politicians in those cities. Okay. So all things for us to think about and be aware of, all right, and not let them, throw these wild numbers out there. We have to question them on it. One of the things that we got to question them on is how many of these Polymer 80s actually end up in as evidence for murder cases or armed robbery cases that go to trial. Okay, because when something goes to trial, now we get a chance to actually look at the entire case and find out exactly what it's all about. That's what I would look at. Right, look at actual court cases where these guns are in fact violently used. Okay. So spread this information around. Don't let them get away with making up these numbers. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Hit the bell button so you get the notifications, and build. The more of these that we can put into circulation, the harder it is for them to ban them. Okay. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.